Welcome to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet with Ryan Poterack from Poterack Capital Advisory. You have unique values, objectives, fears, life experiences, and biases. Any financial professional who ignores or minimizes the importance of your story may not be able to help you achieve your ideal outcomes or hit your goals. It's time to experience the PCA difference. In this podcast, we help business executives, soon-to-be retirees, and solutions-based individuals overcome the anxiety leading up to their upcoming years. We do this by initiating in-depth discussions about the financial aspects of retirement, like tax planning and asset allocation, alongside, and often overlooked, personal and lifestyle aspects. Join us for this journey where we explore retirement from a contrarian point of view, as Ryan draws from years of experience and qualified guest professionals to help you explore the true purpose of your money in retirement and the impact you want to make in your golden years. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Poterack Capital Advisory are separate entities. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized legal or tax advice. Please consult your legal or tax advisor regarding your specific situation.
In almost every case, growing your wealth takes decades of time. And with that, well, that's quite a bit of patience, too. Your host, Ryan Poterack, Wealth Manager, and Alec Quaid, Certified Financial Planner, have some insight to help you understand the growth part and the patience part. Ryan, let's start with compound interest, this beautiful thing that is compound interest. What is it?
Well, compound interest is a bit old school in terminology. More generally these days, it's allowing for your money to grow over a longer period of time. And the reason I say compound interest is a bit old school is very few people earn interest, which is paid by savings accounts, certificates of deposit. They're typically invested in other vehicles, but have the surest path to wealth for all of us is having discipline and patience. And so it does take time for money to build up over decades.
Alec, anything to add there?
It's a great way to get rich slow.
Yep.
It works every time.
Yeah,
I can't say the G word, but it's a great way to build wealth over time with patience, as Ryan said.
Patrice, I tell clients sometimes when the market's not doing well, I say, well, we're losing your money slower than the general market. So I like that get rich slow plan.
All right. Well, what is compound interest? How does it work?
Well, if you were to deposit whatever, $10,000 and it earns, let's say 5% interest or $500 in the first year. Well, in the second year, let's just keep the interest at 5%, keep it the same. Now you're earning 5%, not just on your $10,000 original deposit, but if you've left that alone because it's long-term money, now you're getting 5% on $10,500, and so on and so forth. So that's the compound part. That's what that means. There's terminology called simple interest. And if a person had 10 grand with 5% simple interest, they just get $500 every year. Compound means that you're earning interest on the original deposit and the ongoing interest that accumulates. And so that allows to build wealth.
Well, with compound interest, it does take patience. It takes time.
Absolutely. And time is the most important factor in this equation. I think that's what's lost on, especially, I'll loop myself into the younger generation, where it's all about the next hot stock, the next hot investment. How much of a rate of return can I get year in and year out? Rate of return matters, but it's actually not the most important thing when it comes to compound interest. It's time. The time you have money in the market or in an investment that allows it to compound is far and away much more important than the rate of return you earn in a given year. And by way of example, just to put some numbers to it, starting early, we've all heard starting early is the most important thing when it comes to compounding your wealth. But here's just an easy monetary example to help you imagine what that really looks like. So if we were to take John, and John were to save from age 25 to 40, $10,000 a year. That's 15 years, $150,000 total. At age 65, John has just over $1 million. If we Take Sally, who saves from age 35 to 65, also $10,000 a year. That's $300,000. Sally gets to 65 and has just short of $840,000. So Sally, in this case, has saved twice the amount of money for twice the amount of time and still has less money than John. And that just shows, plain and simple, that because John started early and had more time for his wealth to accumulate, the power of compound interest is at work.
That's a good point, Alec. It also, when we think of interest, it's kind of very specific, but even into the stock market, the other thing, Patrice, about timeframes is how unpredictable the stock market is in shorter timeframes. On a daily basis, it's a coin flip. On a year statistically, 7 out of 10 years, the stock market is positive. But when you're looking at 15-year period, for example, the S&P 500 has never had a losing 15-year period. So all of the anomalies get worked out. So sometimes people will conflate statistics. They'll say, well, the market in the long run averages 9 or 10%, which is roughly true, certainly for this forum, but that doesn't mean that you get 9 or 10% every single year. Matter of fact, there are decades in which you get far, far less than that and far, far more than that. But if you start getting out 15, 20 years, or the timeframes that Alec was just sharing, at least historically, it's very predictable that the person is going to hit that 9 to 10 average if they're looking out 20, 25 years, as Alec suggested. With stock market as opposed to interest is usually tied to guaranteed vehicles, but a lot of our audience certainly has money in the stock market, mutual funds, etc. Similar concept. Let it grow.
Right, exactly.
Ignore your statements to a degree.
Time and patience, but how do you stay patient?
Well, it's not easy. I think Alec and I and many wealth managers out there, behavioral finance is a big part of what we do. There's probably not a listener on this podcast that has not heard of buy low, sell high, except for when the stock market is getting annihilated or having a difficult time frame. In other words, the prices are low. Fear leads people to selling low, sitting on the sidelines until all the headlines are roses again, and then buying high. So I'll go back to what Alex said in the beginning of our podcast today. Time frame is the most important. If a person wants to invest money in anything, but they say, well, we want to get a bigger house in 3 years. That is entirely different what we might recommend versus this is for college education for our son that was born 3 months ago, or retirement, because it's just much more predictable. So time frame is the number one variable, but it's not typically in the people we talk to, the clients and prospective clients. That's not where their mind goes first. They'll tend to ask Alec and I, well, what's your rate of return? But there's so much more to it.
This actually reminds me of a quote, probably my favorite quote on compound interest, by the late Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner at Berkshire, if you're not familiar. He says, the first and most important rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. And so going back to what Ryan said about behavioral coaching, the value that we add there is immense. Ryan, I know you've seen this as well, but clients who have become clients maybe in the past 5-10 years or so, and they didn't have an advisor during 0809. And they did exactly what Ryan just said, where they are scared and they react emotionally and they interrupt compounding unnecessarily because they have fear and they're human and they have emotions. It's understandable, but they end up selling low and buying back in high, because I've seen multiple cases where the client has come to me and they have been out of the market 4, 5, 6 years. Well, you've missed the big bull market post 0809. So to recoup your losses. So yeah, the compounding, you get rewarded long-term for being able to hang in the roller coaster in the short term. No doubt about it.
Patrice, there's also kind of a neat calculation. It's called the rule of 72. So rule of 72 says you can take any particular interest rate, let's say 6%, You divide 6% into 72 and you get 12. So that's how long it takes money to double if you're earning 6%. So you have 100,000 at 6%. Let's say it was 6% consistently, just as an example. It's going to be 200,000 in 12 years. If you're earning 9%, divide 9 into 72 and you get 8. You'll double your money in 8 years. So that's also, and it's just arithmetic, but that's also how compound interest would work as far as a person could look at, well, what am I earning on my savings?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's 4% because they don't want investment risk. 4%, 4 into 72 is 18. And so in 18 years, their money doubles. And so it's just kind of an interesting, I don't know, it's not a trick, it's just arithmetic, but I find it to be helpful and for people to be thinking of it that way. But again, consistent with what Alec is saying or what Charlie Munger said, don't interrupt it.
Well, how do you, when someone comes to you and, or how do you stop someone from coming to you and saying, I've got to get out now? How do you explain to them, no, don't?
Alec, you want to take that?
We say no, don't. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
That's pretty much yeah. Patrice, can we record you? No, but it really is. It. I mean, Alec and I, as fiduciaries, have to call it as we see it. So we're not at all paid to agree. In my view, we're paid to advise. And at the same time, Patrice, I never forget whose money it is. So if we're advising that client appropriately based on their situation, now sometimes there's new information and maybe they want to get out, but there's something involved, job separation, could be a lot of other things. But absent new information, we're going to revisit why we invested the way we invested. What was the time frame for those investments? Has that materially changed today? Because if we made long-term decisions to invest 3 years ago, then it hasn't materially changed 3 years from then if it was a long-term view. Now, if I feel or we feel that we're heard and that they understand the advice and its applicability today, and they still just want to stop the bleeding or they're scared, then I can respect that. But their emotional reaction or fear-based reaction, I view as part of our responsibility and part of why we're being paid is to be the voice, the objective voice of reasoning in all situations. But if somebody wants to go on the sidelines, then, I mean, again, I never forget whose money it is.
Right. Their call. Alec?
Having those emotions of fear, totally human, totally normal, right? And so this is where a third party objective, because Ryan and I can look at our client situation with an unemotional objective view. A client cannot look at their own money that way. Heck, Ryan and I may look at our own money in an emotional way at times because it's our money. But when it's someone else's money, we can look at it completely objectively. And that's where we can help make the client make decisions that dramatically can impact their financial outcomes. But from the beginning, Patrice, I think we're setting the client up for success because inevitably we understand that market cycles happen, that bear markets or down markets happen. Setting them up for success from the beginning and having those conversations up front, really expectation management. What will we do? Not if, when this happens. And what do we have in place to protect you from when this happens? So when a client calls in with fear or uncertainty, that's understandable. A lot of times we're reminding them of what we've already put in place.
Their own words.
Yeah. And they just need a reminder. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, going back to, hey, remember we did X, Y, and Z, and this is what's going to happen. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. 9 times out of 10. So
yeah, I would say also we're somewhat unique in that proactive communication really helps solve this issue. So with Alec and I and our team, we are communicating with all of the families we served often. And in those days or weeks where it's really difficult for the market and such, getting out in front of that and just calming people down with some of the words that Alec just said, and certainly some of the principles, makes a big difference. People just oftentimes want to be reminded that things are going to be okay. This isn't grocery money. We're not investing grocery money. We're not investing college tuition money when the child is in college with any great deal of risk. So, but it's what's interesting is that no two situations are identical. So it's respecting the person that you're listening to and getting their concerns out on the table, kind of a step-by-step hand holding to bring them back around. And thankfully, we've been pretty successful at that.
It's your patients too, as well as their patients, it sounds like.
I remember going through the pandemic first couple of months, and first thing I looked at was, well, what was the market looking at that day? I mean, the swings at that time were really tough, and that does impact. It's not my money, but it impacts my business. It impacted Alec's business at the time and the clients. That was difficult, but we went through the pandemic and there wasn't a single client that tapped out, and they were rewarded for that because all of the 30+% that the S&P went down in about a 5-week time frame was all recouped by the summer.
Right.
And that's not normal, Patrice, I will say. I mean, Ryan and I have lots of advisor friends in the industry, and this isn't to bash other advisors, but we come at it from such a planning, holistic approach to not have one client bail out and go to the sidelines in cash. That's not normal. I would say there's a lot of advisory firms who, they lead with the investments, they lead with the rate of return. That's their selling point, which isn't ours at all. So when you have that approach, yes, clients understandably so are going to be much more fearful and emotionally reactive because they don't have a plan in place from the beginning.
Yeah, we might be drifting a bit, Patrice, but I would
it's okay.
I would add that these conversations are not comfortable for us. They're not comfortable for Alec or I, but it's so important to have those at a time when the client is most scared. And actually they might not have yet even communicated it, but when the market's doing that, I know our families are concerned. To be proactive and make the call instead of hiding under your desk, hoping you're not called. It's not an easy strategy, but it is the best strategy from our point of view.
Well, that goes to the relationship that you have with your clients.
Yes. Yeah. Because when you get on the other side of all that dreary stuff, you've really built up credibility, and it's greatly appreciated. And then it gets easier for them the next time, which is inevitable. There's typically a recession every 3 or 4 years in this economy, going back to forever. So, yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we did drift a little bit, but that was great. Compound interest, rule of 72, and patience, just patience. What else can we add here before we wrap up? Anything we missed? Okay, then.
I guess I would say, as a father, and Alec as a soon-to-be father, teaching patience and discipline to your kids to save a little bit of money, whether it's in a piggy bank or take them to the bank. At least back in my day, we used to have passbook savings accounts. Those are long gone. But I would think instilling that along with good manners and the other things that we do as parents, you would really be helping your children to start teaching them the main ingredients to wealth in a lifetime.
Those passbooks, Ryan, they were awesome. You'd go in, you'd see the interest added on, even if it was a penny or two.
Yes.
That was money you earned.
Patrice, I was going to pull you into my generation. I said, no, Ryan, don't do it. Just speak yourself.
For a very long time.
But yeah, Alec, they literally with pen on paper, they would say how much was deposited in the end. It was another time.
They printed on the book. We didn't write in ink.
That's true.
Book yet, so
yeah, that's true.
That was way back, Ryan. Way back.
Yep.
Well, now, how can listeners reach you?
Well, they can always go to our website at www.poterack, POTERACK.net. Also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So, or email, phone, but our website has all of the podcasts from the past. It has our blog post. So there's lots of ways to kind of get a sense of who we are.
All right, listeners, patience and guidance can help you reach your financial goals. After all, life isn't lived on a spreadsheet. So follow this podcast for the latest shows and please share with others. I'm Patrice Sikora, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you for listening to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Making It Count, Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet by Ryan Poterack, visit www.poterack.net or give us a call at 704-366-5776. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Poterack Capital Advisory. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Poterack Capital Advisory does not offer legal or tax advice. Please consult the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstances. Nothing contained herein is to be considered a solicitation, research material, an investment recommendation, or advice of any kind. The information contained herein may contain information that is subject to change without notice. Any investments or strategies referenced herein do not take into account the investment objectives, financial situation, or particular needs of any specific person.
Product sustainability must be independently determined for each individual investor. Poterack Capital Advisory explicitly disclaims any responsibility for product suitability or suitability determinations related to individual investors.